Japan Up Close.
I think Japan and Africa have enjoyed great relationships over the year. The relationship has been friendly and quite reliable, and Africa continues to appreciate the contributions by Japan on Africa's development, and on that, Africa expects and hopes that the relationships will grow stronger, and especially if we look at development cooperation between Japan and Africa or specific African countries, including official development assistance. And we know Japan is one of the leading countries on official development assistance, especially to Africa. We can only hope that that will continue to grow. Will continue to grow both in terms of investments, but also in terms of trade. So we are hoping that there will be more. Africa is hoping that there will be more investments and trade, more economic ties between the continent and Japan, based on the shared values, because again, Japan and Africa shares quite some values, but also based on the need to maximize opportunities on the continent. So the expectations is that the economic ties and the relationship will grow stronger and stronger for mutual benefit. I mean, and by that I mean for both Japan and Africa.
This is actually, you're talking about the expectation from Africa. So I'm not really in the position to answer the question, but one thing I would like to mention is that, as Mr. Obonyo has mentioned, that the investment is obviously the one that we feel that, there's a lot of expectation from Africa, and also on the media in Japan. Actually, after TICAD 8. One issue that has mentioned quite a lot was actually the amount of the dollars which our government has actually committed, which is about $30 billion US. And this is something that also a lot of government of Africa are kind of expecting what Japanese government are doing for Africa with such a dollars. But one thing I would like to mention more is actually, at the time of the TICAD, the outcome of the TICAD 8 was actually the Tunis declarations. That declaration actually mentioned a lot about the investment of the people, and regarding the amount of the youth people of Africa, which is very much growing, and it's going to consist of the pretty much amount of the a lot of countries. I think investment of people is quite important, and this is something that Japan or JICA can actually contribute on. So I think that's just one thing, investment on people. The other thing is that, of course, Japan has a lot of, our unique experiences, especially after 19th centuries. This is something that we can also share with African country, because Japan is the first country which has successful, for modernizations after 19th centuries. And through that history, not only every piece was successful, but we have experienced like a war experience or environmental pollution. Those kind of negative experience also something that we can share with African countries. So sharing this kind of Japanese unique experience for the modernization, keeping our own identity, is something that we can also share for Africa. First, let me talk about how important youth for Africa. It is actually, great potential, and they are the one who has a lot of innovative ideas. So it is no doubt that we need to invest on this kind of youth people, and this have to be right timing, because they are actually the potential. But also, if you have if they don't have any opportunity to get educations, they can be the risk. Without the people, with educated people, the youth might not able to have jobs, and this kind of employment situation actually costs some kind of unstable situation with the countries. So we need to have, great education opportunities for the youth people. Having said that, we are actually putting a lot of priorities on education as a JICA in various areas. One thing is maybe enlargement of the opportunity for the education, especially for the rural population of Africa, because they are the one who actually lacking opportunities. So one thing that we are doing is like a so-called community-based school management, which is in a lot of area. Government doesn't have a capacity to provide education, but instead of just relying on the government, but it is actually community who has a capacity to manage a school for the community. So we have this kind of school management model by the community started in Niger, and actually that model started from 20 schools in Niger, but now it has expanded to about how much 700,000 schools in 7 countries, and that actually provided a lot of opportunity for the children in the rural area on the government. And this actually, we did it, especially in the Sahel regions. This is actually, very important to keep the Africa, stable. So that's one thing. The other thing I want to mention is Japan has a quite good advantages on the math and science. So we are actually dealing with the school quality issues as well, and utilizing with our experiences of the math and science. We have contributing teacher educations or school materials, teaching materials, the kind of things. And in several countries, we have a program providing such a project of providing such opportunity for learning experiences for the teachers. The last thing I want to mention is that the higher education and vocational trainings, these are very much important, especially for the employment. And we are doing a lot of projects in several areas in Africa. And also, we have some kind of scholarship program. We call it Abe Initiative. This is a scholarship program that we invite to Japanese university, the African youth. But it's not the merely scholarship, but we also provide some kind of job experiences in Japan, so that they can actually connect the business between Japan and Africa. And these are something that we can provide. And so far, we have invited about 1,500 people. And every year, we have invited about 200 people from Africa to Japan, so that they can actually connect Japanese private sector to Africa. And this is something that we can actually also promote in the coming years as well.
I must say, from my own assessment, is that support from Japan has been extremely successful for various reasons. One, the model that the approach that Japan uses. One is that the support is not just for government, but it's also for people. And people's development initiatives are very important and have been quite successful. So that model and that approach by Japan is extremely important. The other reason is the twin principle of ownership and partnership. Japan has been able to support Africa in areas where they need support. And one of those very key areas is education. And that way it means that they are supporting Africa priorities and not just Japan's priorities. And that way, most of support has gone into the right places and contributed to development. That kind of mutual understanding, mutual respect, ownership, partnership, and prioritization of government and people's initiative is very unique. And you'll find that other development partners might not necessarily use that, are not necessarily using that approach. And let me just single out a few areas that Japan has been very successful. One is in terms of offering scholarships. I think that is a model that has worked very, very well. Quite a number of African students have benefited from scholarships that are offered by Japan in the areas of math and science. and whether either they've been based back in Japan or have come back to Africa to share the learnings, the expertise, and the knowledge, and that has contributed towards the development of Africa. So scholarships, that is something that has worked very well. The other thing is the issue of supporting higher education, and you will find that in various universities in Africa, they even have either a component or a facility supported by Japan, especially on matters math and science. So Japan has been able to invest in both facilities in terms of infrastructure, but also in curriculum, and that helps African students to enjoy modern facilities, but also to be competitive in the global market. The other bit is on innovation. Japan has done very well, and it's one of the leading countries on matters innovation. And they've been able to support African countries and institutions of higher learning to be able to develop hubs and innovation facilities. And across the continent, you will find there are a number of innovation facilities developed with support from Japan. And lastly, it's just the issue of investing in youth. Africa has a very youthful population that is almost termed as the greatest asset that the continent has. Japan has been able to realize the importance of investing in youth, and that way most of the priority programs, priority projects, and development initiatives by Japan have been focusing on the youth. And that means they're not just investing for now, they're investing for the future, because an empowered youth, an enabled youth means a strong Africa, means a developed Africa. So looking at the way Japan has been able to plan and implement its development projects, you will realize that they are more sustainable, they are more impactful compared to other development partners, whether we are talking about China, whether we are talking about India, whether we are talking about United States, whether we are talking about the European Union. I think Japan has been able to do remarkably well, and they've been able to accomplish a lot more because of the model, because of their approach, because of their nature of investment and the areas in which they focus on.
It is actually a very good question. Well, before I answer the question, this is something that we must do it. Because the reason why JICA is working together with Africa is maybe we have two reasons. One is, of course, for the African development. The second is, to have a mutual trust relationship between Japan and African people. And talking about our goal for the African development, we are humble enough that Japan cannot do everything to meet with the African needs. The African needs is tremendous, and we need to work together. Otherwise, we will never, achieve the goal that we are heading. We have Agenda 2063. We have SDGs. We have a lot of goals in each country, but one donor cannot, take responsibility for everything. So we have to work together, and the key thing that we think is that especially our JICA's approach pretty much put importance of the African ownership, and in African countries are actually taking initiatives and ownership. If you're looking at the African Union's leadership with the NEPAD, this kind of AU implementation agency actually taking good initiative for achieve to their own goal. So the most important thing is we need to align to these kind of plans or strategies that Africa countries already have, and this is something that we should really focus on to be coordinated. We have to, respect Africa's ownership. And the other thing JICA is also doing is that I think each donor have each sort of advantage or uniqueness. Something is add value for African countries. For in case of JICA, I say Kaizen initiative. This is efficiency change productivity initiatives that has been quite successful in Japan for the rapid economic growth after the war. This is something that's used for Africa, for African industries. And what we are doing is not, it's not asset just for JICA, but for everybody's. So we are trying to work together with other donors. We actually working with donors like a UNDP, and it's share the what Japan has experienced, and we are working together with UNDP and disseminating the kind of approach for different countries, because JICA is very strict to work on a very unsecure area. And this is something that our government would not allow Japanese personnel to work in very, unstable area. But by working with the other donors, which is more, free to work that kind of area, then we can maximize our activities. So this is something that we are doing, and we call it, we call global agenda. This kind of approach that we have, not only Kaizen, we have something like a maternal health. We have something in like climate change, different themes, different sectors. We have the kind of our unique approach that we have as advantage, but we try to work together with other donors to make it, we call it collective impact. So yeah, so the kind of approach, I think we can achieve to the ultimate goal that the African government are actually having. And last, the reason, as a result, I think we believe that the mutual trust can be also established between the Japanese government, the Japanese people, as well as the African people.
One, of course, it is desirable for donor or developed countries to work together to support projects and programs in Africa. There is high chances that a lot more can be accomplished and achieved if donors worked together, and so there's space and place for that, which is important and desired. And so partners should constantly find ways of working together for better coordination, for greater impact in Africa. But having said that, I think it is also important to realize that the challenges in Africa are many, and they are extensive. And one particular donor, like Yakushi did say, is not able to address all the challenges, whether we are talking about insecurity, whether we are talking about access to education, whether we are talking about issues of job opportunities, whether we're talking about infrastructure, transport. It requires a sort of multi-stakeholders approach. It requires a pool of actors and donors to work together. But also these actors, these donors have areas that they have more strength than the others. And so that also goes to point that individual donors like JICA, for example, should continue working bilaterally with either individual countries or the continent, because there are certain things that Japan is just good at doing, and no one else perhaps can do it. So it is just important that they also continue engaging individual countries, but also Africa as a collective, just as Japan or JICA for that matter, because you will realize that the pillars of Japan also are very unique, and that sometimes can get lost if they are in a big pool. For example, if you look at Japan's focus on Africa's ownership and empowering Africa's capacity, it's very unique. Not every donor wants to operate in that way, and that makes Japan very, very unique. So they shouldn't lose that simply because they have to work with other donors. The other pillar, which I find very, very key, is focusing on the people. Not every donor focuses on the people. Some donors just want to focus on government, and they just want to work with government. Japan is really keen on ensuring that whatever support, whatever initiative they have, has impact on the people in terms of human security or in terms of dignity, that's again very, very unique, that they shouldn't lose just by jumping into a bigger pool. And lastly is just the other pillar that I find very unique being exposed by Japan is the great experience they have in whether you're talking about technology, whether you're talking about the digital sphere. The development experience that Japan has is very, very, very unique, which is something that Africa wants to borrow or learn from directly. So perhaps Japan could share that with other donors, but also just directly with Africa. So yes, the challenges in Africa are myriad and requires sort of collective. So as we endeavor for donors to work as a collective to meet the challenges in Africa or to maximize opportunities on the continent, it is also just important to emphasize the fact that Japan and JICA, for that matter, should continue engaging directly or bilaterally with African countries and with Africa as a continent.
It really depends on how African people value Japanese cooperation, and which I think Obonyo-san has already mentioned quite a lot. But I think I would say Africa is a very, very important actor in the world. By 2050, the quarter of population of the world will be shared by Africa, and Africa's stability is something very important for the world stability. And this is why a lot of countries are very much curious to try to engage with Africa, and Japan is obviously one of them. And for the Japan. Because our population has been decreasing, and we cannot survive by ourselves, right? Japan is a country, that have to connect with the world. That is the only way that we can survive as a country, and this is the reason why we are putting a lot of budget for the ODA compared to other countries, and now. Africa is a major actors in the world, and the kind of trust relationship between Africa and Japan really contribute to world stability, and this is something that we should expect for other countries as well. So I would not say that the trust relationship between Japan and Africa will impact on the other countries of the world, but at least for the Japan and Japan's how to say healthy relationship is the world. I think it cannot take off this peace with Africa. The other thing maybe I will say is that Japan as a country with a democracy, democratic values, I think this is very important for us to keep good relationship with those countries in Africa. I'm not saying that all Africa shall take over the same system, same political value with Japan, but I mean each country have a different system and different stage, I would say. But with this kind of political matters, as a country with a democracy which has a democratic value, I think it's very important to to have a mutual understanding, and this is something that very much important for the world stability, because each country have a different system and different values, but we shouldn't have any conflict between them, and we have and Japan can take a role to sort of say coordinate whatever to keep the sound relationship. And I think our relationship between Japan and Africa can sort of symbolize the kind of situation after facing the turmoil that we are facing in the world right now.
People in Africa, I mean, there's no doubt people in Africa, whether we're talking about governments or whether we're talking about people, continues to appreciate the value of Japan's cooperation, especially because it's anchored on mutual trust. Both Japan and Africa seem to have deep trust in each other and in what in what they are working on together. So it is important to emphasize that. The second thing is that working together, I mean, Japan and Africa need each other. One is because, first of all, there's a long history of Japan working together with Africa, and that long history also has anecdotes of great achievements that have been made. I think working to continuing to work together means that they'll be building on some of those accomplishments and achievements. The other reason why Africa and Japan are tied on the hip is because of the shared values. Japan and Africa tend to share quite a bit of values, for human progress, for mutual, issues of mutual respect and all that. And so the fact that they share values means that they can walk and work together, and so they need to keep building on that. The other key reason why I think Japan and Africa must and should continue working together is the issue of the challenges that are affecting Africa are not just unique to Africa. You will find that these challenges are also have far-reaching implications if they are not addressed. You see, for example, now Europe is grappling with the challenge of immigration. It basically means if African youth are not able to access quality education, are not able to access livelihoods, this can impact the rest of the world in some cases negatively. And so it is in the interest of Japan, developed countries like Japan, to reach out and help Africa to address its own some of the challenges, which can have serious implications beyond the continent. We are just emerging from COVID-19 pandemic, and we realize how a challenge in one corner of the world can affect almost the entire globe. And so it is important for countries to work together and to pull together to address some of these challenges. But it is not just because of the challenges. There are also a myriad of opportunities on the continent. Africa is now on the rise. Some of the fastest growing countries, economically speaking, are now on the continent. Africa is the most youthful has the most youthful population on the continent. These youth have the creativity, they have the talent, they have the energy, which is not just needed in Africa; it's needed across the globe. Some of the innovations that have been coming out are now in the world are not just are not necessarily outside Africa. Some of them are coming from Africa. And so these are opportunities that Japan can tap on. These are opportunities that other developed countries can tap on, and so that we are able to achieve the what have been defined as development goals, whether we are talking about sustainable development goals, whether we are talking about Agenda 2063 on African vision for development. They require partnerships, and what better partnership than the partnership between Africa and Japan to realize some of these development goals. So there is mutual benefit, if you ask me, for Africa to cooperate with Japan or vice versa. They are able to achieve a lot more together, but they're also able to achieve more for each other or individually. For individual countries and the continent. So there is mutual benefit for Japan-Africa cooperation. My question is on the issue of competition between the various development partners or donors, for that matter. There is huge competition, which and competition is not a bad thing. Sometimes it helps us to produce the best of ideas, the best of initiatives. But you will find that sometimes there's more focus on the competition, for example, between Japan, China, India, United States, European Union, and now Russia on the continent. I don't know what Yakushi would say about this competition. Does it slow down Japan? Does it make Japan feel like they need to do something different from what they are doing? Does it make you feel better, or does it make you feel like, does it slow you down? Does it affect your cooperation with Africa?
That's a very, very interesting question. I joined the last night. I joined the Chatham House seminar as a panelist, and that was held in UK. And most of the participants are actually Europe and Africa. And all the questions I got is really about these competitions, and a lot of people are actually aware that Chinese presence in Africa, and they always compare with China and Japan. And as you see that after the Ukraine crisis, now not only China, but US, Europe, Russia, it's getting closer to Africa and try to engage. And TICAD 8 was actually held amid the situations. And we actually thought about it, what is happening in Africa. But, well, as a JICA, what we kind of end up is we are not really competing with others because if you in terms of the volume of the or the amount that we spend on the ODA, we don't have any expectation that our government expand double something like that. But instead, I think we are and we don't. I mean, to meet with African needs, Japan cannot be responsible for all the needs anyways. So we kind of started thinking about what is actually the add value for Africa as a Japan. Maybe it's not the volume of the ODA, but maybe something unique to us. And this is exactly what we have just discussed. We have actually raised 3 points of the uniqueness of Japanese ODA, which is first is focus on people and engaging people, especially that includes vulnerable people and human security. And people doesn't mean not only providing service to each individuals, but also to sort of connect the people between the local people and the government people, local people to Japanese people. And this is something we try to establish, trust relationship between the government and people. This is very important for the stability of the country, and also connecting people from Japanese to people and African people. And this is, as you said, the mutual benefit. This is very important for both of us. The other uniqueness we thought is the ownership of Africa. This is something we have already mentioned, and this is maybe something unique to us. This is actually normal for us, for JICA. We're doing cooperating with Africa for 50 years with the same concept, and TICAD has started from 1993 and with the same concept. But maybe it's not necessary for the other partners somehow. But anyway, we want to keep in stock this principle. The other thing is, of course, as I just mentioned, utilizing some of the Japan's development experiences. And because we are the first country, we have been successful for the modernizations as a non-Western countries, and we actually kept our identity quite well, and identity is the most important thing for the country, and I believe it's the same to Africa, and this is something that we are unique to Africa, and I'm glad to hear that you have mentioned this is a uniqueness of the JICA's approach, and this is exactly the thing that we are thinking about it. So we are not really comparing or competing with the other donors, but we want to sort of try to sort of share the concept of our activities to African people, because just claiming like this doesn't mean anything, right? So we try to sort of, especially on the occasion of TICAD 8, we actually put a lot of emphasis on, to share, utilizing some media, so some events, so that we can sort of connect each other and know each other. And this is something that we are doing about it. And as you Sato-san has mentioned that I think each donor should also coordinate for the African development, because our goal is the same. And so instead of competing or comparing each other, but we need to collaborate together. And to collaborate, as I said again, ownership of Africa is very key, because Africa is the one who choose the best for Africa and who coordinate, with those other, different development partners. And I think a lot of donors are pretty much, prepared for it. And I think this is a very time that we should work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Just another very quick one in terms of the challenges to development on the continent. One of the key challenges to development in the world, but most importantly in Africa, has been the question of governance, and the issue of corruption has really deprived Africa and Africa's people the opportunity to grow and develop. And I'm sure development partners like JICA have experienced this as a challenge. So perhaps just to pose it as a question, is this a challenge you've experienced, and how have you been able to go around it? Even with all the good intentions that you have, sometimes you find leaders whose intentions are not necessarily development, but to line their pockets with the support that you give to the countries. How have you been able to address that?
Yeah, that's another good question. And I think the governance issues is not, of course, it is some kind of obstacle for the African people to get the support or service, the social services that they should have received. That governance issues actually hinders a lot of things, not only for the African people, but also Japanese, like private sector. A lot of private sector still think that Africa which has a lot of risk for the investment. And the governance issues are the very ones, the issues that a lot of private sectors actually, thinking serious about it. So it's obvious that we have to do something, but it is also very tricky issues that as external donors to intervene, so what we can do is actually, sharing the models, what we have doing, and we cannot really oblige something to the political leaders, but we can sort of share the, some our cases or examples of how transparent government should work on it. And one thing I kind of came out to my mind is utilization of the DX, because DX sometimes guarantee transparency, and if the public support this political process, then that will also work somehow. And this is how it works in Japan, some local area. So that's one thing. The other thing is we are basically talking about law on the issue of like central government, but something like at the community level. As I just introduced some of our activities in the school management in the rural area, and there are local government who are actually providing service. It's basically all the social services that the community receive is basically from the lower level of the government, and they are the one who know about the needs of the communities, and the kind of trustworthy relationship is very important between the government, but that shall start from the locals, and this is something that we try to approach as a JICA in education sector, because school is a lot of cases in the rural area is a center of the community, and we see a lot of cases successful cases that the kind of trustworthy relationship has been established. That means the community actually monitors what government is doing, and the government tries to respond to the community's needs. And that kind of, if that kind of system works, maybe still the community cannot get direct services from the central government, but still like issues like education or health services, or I would say like agriculture issues. A lot of cases, this kind of local governments providing good services. So our focus is, another focus is there to provide some kind of good local governments in terms of the community's point of view.
Japan up close.